Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
Good evening and welcome. This is tonight's primetime news on TV1 with me, Muad Razik. First, let's have a look at tonight's headlines.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. KDK, the reliable fan.
COVID-19 infection.
අපිට තාම කියන්න කල් වැඩි අපේ රටේ තාම රැල්ලක් එන්නේ නැහැ කියලා කියන වචනේ.
Fuel supplied to generate power for 3 days. The need to impose power cuts to be reviewed on Thursday. Discussions to allow CEB to import fuel directly from India. Farmers to be compensated for lost harvest. 40 billion rupees allocated for payment. Bank prints 26 billion rupees. 12 years since the disappearance of Prageet Eknaligoda. Hand grenade discovery at a church may have been an attempt to prevent the special mass marking 1000 days since the April 21st attacks. Cardinal's lawyer tells court.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. KDK, the reliable fan.
On a top story tonight, the Education Ministry says it's on alert as the Omicron variant is spreading among children and teachers.
The Education Ministry hopes to obtain the relevant instructions from the Ministry of Health with regard to the detection of COVID-19 cases from schools. Deputy Director of Health Services Dr. G. Vijay Surya said the rate of hospital admissions among children who had contracted the COVID-19 virus has also risen sharply. Is there a possibility of another COVID-19 wave?
මේ ඔමික්‍රෝන් රැල්ල ලෝකයේ පුරා
This Omicron wave of the COVID-19 virus has already affected many countries across the world. We have not witnessed a serious situation in Sri Lanka yet. We must remind the public again and again that the previous waves of the COVID-19 virus emerged in Sri Lanka after some time since being reported globally. Therefore, it is still too early for us to state that there will be no new wave in the country. As of today, it is possible to consider that at least 50% of the COVID-19 patients in the country could be infected with the Omicron variant of the virus. It is also important to remember that there is an equal number of people infected with the Delta variant of COVID-19 in the country as well.
තවමත් ඩෙල්ටා රෝගීන් ඉන්න බවත් මතක තබා ගත යුතුයි.
Why is there a delay in detecting Omicron cases?
දවසකට 8000කට
We conduct more than 8,000 PCR tests daily. However, we can't direct all of these 8,000 samples for genome sequencing. Moreover, around 800 positive cases are detected daily. We cannot direct all of these 800 cases for genome sequencing either. What we do is we obtain random samples of the COVID-19 patients and subject those to genome sequencing from time to time. By doing so, we determine the percentage of the Omicron cases and Delta cases among the COVID-19 patients reported from the country.
කොයිතරම් ප්‍රතිශතයක් ඩෙල්ටා රෝගීන්ද කියන එක.
What is the status of COVID-19 infections and the situation at treatment centers? Dr. Hemanta Herath says that 5,758 beds at COVID-19 treatment centers and 62 beds at intensive care units are occupied at the moment. The Director General of Health Services today, the 25th, confirmed that 17 COVID-19 deaths were reported in the country on Monday, the 24th. The COVID-19 fatalities have risen to 15,330. The rate of COVID-19 cases detected in the country in the past 5 days has risen sharply. On the 20th of January, 827 COVID-19 patients were detected from 8,242 PCR tests. On the 21st, 840 COVID-19 patients were detected from 8,716 PCR tests. On the 22nd, 845 COVID-19 patients were detected from 7,501 PCR tests. And on the 23rd, 838 COVID-19 patients were detected from 6,774 PCR tests. Yesterday, 8,383 PCR tests were conducted in the country and 877 COVID-19 patients were detected. These are serious superstitious ideas. One must keep in mind that if they contract the COVID-19 virus, all these issues may arise. Therefore, we urge every citizen of this country to receive the booster shot as soon as possible in order to avoid another wave. On the one hand, a person who received the vaccine thinks that every single ailment since receiving the vaccine is caused by the jab. We sometimes have patients visiting the hospital who had received the COVID-19 vaccine 4 months ago and asking us whether the headache since 3 days ago is because of the vaccine. On the other hand, the youth is of a completely different stance. They think the vaccine could cause infertility. The police conducted roadside checks on buses in several areas in Colombo today. The checks were carried out to monitor whether passengers are transported in line with COVID-19 health guidelines.
තමයි යන ගමන සමහරලාට පරක් වෙනවා නම් පොඩ්ඩක් කලින් යන්න. මේ තියෙන වසංගතයෙන් බේරෙන්න තම තමන් පරිස්සම් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම සමාජයේ අනෙක් මිනිස්සු බේර ගන්නත් තමන්ට වගකීමක් තියෙනවා. ඔයාලගේ ජීවිත අපිට වටිනවා. අපේ රටට වටිනවා. ඩ්‍රයිවර් මහත්තයාට කොන්දොස්තර මහත්තයාට සහයෝගය දෙන්න. එයා කිව්වොත් මාස්තාව නැහැ මේකේ කට්ටිය වැඩි නගින්න එපා කියලා ඊට පස්සේ ඒ එනකොට ඔයාලා ඒකට කොට වෙන්න එපා. මේ මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ජීවිතත් එක්ක ඔයාලා මේ සෙල්ලම් කරන්නේ. ඔයාලගේ වාහනේට ස්පීඩ් ගන්න කට්ටිය ගන්න කියලා විතරයි කියලා තියෙන්නේ.
Let's now cross over to a short commercial break. Stay tuned with News First.
News First. Main sponsor.
Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Providing science education to children in far-flung villages of the country. Tech Bus.
Welcome back. Minister of Power Gabini Lukuge says there is no need to impose power cuts as power plants have received diesel and furnace oil to generate electricity. But the CEB Engineers Union said power cuts would have to be imposed if there are sudden breakdowns.
During a meeting with the president yesterday, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation had agreed to supply 10,000 metric tons of diesel to the Ceylon Electricity Board. The CEB said 15,000 metric tons of furnace oil had been allocated by the CPC for the Yugadanavi power plant. However, those stocks are being released to the Sapugaskanda power plant and the barge-mounted power plant at the Colombo port. Therefore, the Yugadanavi power plant is generating electricity using diesel instead of furnace oil. We can ensure that power cuts won't be imposed tonight. A portion from the 15,000 metric ton stock of furnace oil had been given to the Yugadanavi power plant and has been stored there. We have transferred the fuel it requires to generate electricity for 2 or 3 days. The CEB said that they had to impose power cuts between 6:40 and 7:20 last night, although it was previously announced otherwise. This is how the CEB Engineers Union responded to the situation. Our entire power generation capacity is 2,680 megawatts, but at night we need about 2,600 or 2,650 megawatts of power. Since our entire power generation capacity is 2,680 megawatts, if there is a sudden breakdown, there might be a power cut until the fault is rectified. The cabinet has decided to allow the CEB to purchase fuel directly from the Indian Oil Corporation under the credit line granted to Sri Lanka from India. The Ministry of Power has repeatedly requested permission to import fuel directly. However, the Ministry of Power or any other institution does not have the legal authority to import fuel under the relevant acts. Only the Ministry of Energy or the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation can import fuel. Minister Gammanpilla had expressed his agreement to this decision. The Finance Minister had rendered a great contribution by holding discussions with India. Therefore, if the Ceylon Electricity Board needs to import fuel, they will be able to do that using the funds set aside for this purpose after negotiations between the finance ministers of both countries. Minister Gammanpilla and his ministry had expressed their agreement towards this yesterday. Discussions are being held with the Indian government and the Indian Oil Corporation these days. The main problem that we are experiencing at the moment is the lack of dollars to import fuel. Therefore, discussions are being held to allow the Ceylon Electricity Board to import fuel required by the thermal power plants on credit. As far as I know, there is some progress on those discussions. The Public Utilities Commission today announced that the need to impose power cuts will be reviewed on Thursday. Let us leave yesterday in the past and focus on tomorrow. Considering the statements made by the ministers and the relevant institutions, we feel that it can happen again. Let us see what they have to say.
Now, cabinet approval has been granted to compensate all farmers who lost their harvest during the Maha season. Speaking at the cabinet media briefing today, Agriculture Minister Mahindananda Alutkamage said 40 billion rupees would be allocated for this. If farmers who cultivated more than 800,000 hectares across the country faced losses in their harvest, the cabinet has granted approval to pay compensation. The government will allocate 40 billion for that. With the help of the Department of Census and Statistics and the Department of Agrarian Development, we are conducting an assessment on the harvests of farmers through agriculture research officers. Farmers who cultivated during the Maha season will be eligible to receive this compensation. Regardless of how many effigies of mine they burn or attack, I will stand by this policy. We try to produce food that is free of chemicals. We are considering the losses borne by farmers in terms of production. A farmer can usually reap a harvest of 4 to 5 metric tons from a hectare. Let's assume that the harvest has dropped by 25 or 50%. All farmers will be entitled to this compensation. There won't be any injustice. We will pay compensation for the loss in harvest.
The Agriculture Minister commented on the government's decision to purchase paddy from farmers.
The Cabinet also granted approval for the Paddy Marketing Board to purchase paddy from farmers at competitive rates with the private sector. Today we decided that the Paddy Marketing Board will buy a kilo of paddy from farmers at 75 rupees. But consumers don't have to be disturbed by that. We won't increase the price of rice in the market. The government has decided to import rice. That is because the mafia of rice mill owners had increased the prices up to 150 to 200 rupees in the past. Therefore, the government should have stocks of rice to control these prices. We should have the imported stocks of rice in the country.
The cabinet spokesperson responded to questions of whether rice imported from China is organic.
I was asked whether organic rice is being imported from China. This is still under discussion. We haven't reached a final decision on that. We can't provide an assurance that it has been cultivated through organic farming.
The Samagi Jana Balavegaya commented on this matter today.
They said they will provide meals free of chemicals. Is the rice that they import from China free of chemicals? In Sri Lanka, 138 kilograms of urea is used within a hectare of land, but China uses 500 kilograms. When they import rice from a country that is using more urea than ours, can that be considered as rice that is free of chemicals? They use more urea in Myanmar, but they say they have performed well.
Myanmar ඊටත් වැඩි යූරියා දානවා. ඉතින් කවුද ඒතකොට හැබැයි කියන්නේ? අපි තමයි හොඳටම කළේ. අපි තමයි හොඳටම කළේ. මහා කන්නේන් ආර්ථිකය කඩාවැටුණු ගොවියව.
The farmers who were affected economically during the Maha season can't be uplifted in at least 3 or 4 years. That is the truth. Farmers are indebted to banks. They are forced to mortgage their tractors and other machinery. They are forced to mortgage their homes as well. Will the government pay compensation for this or not? If they are paying compensation, how much will be paid?
වන්දි ගෙවනවා නම් කොච්චරද ගෙවන්නේ? අර එකක් කඩතුළු වකා ගන්නට ගිහින් මට වූ කාර්යය දැන් 100ක් නෙමෙයි. කෝටියක් කඩතුළු හදාගත්තයි ගෝඨාභය ආචාර්යා කියලා තමයි කියන්න වෙන්නේ.
The destruction caused by you and your henchmen was not committed even by Kalinga Maga.
At the start of the Maha season last year, the government took a decision to completely ban chemical fertilizer imports to the country, to discontinue the chemical fertilizer subsidy that was given to farmers, and to only provide subsidies for farmers for organic cultivations. Now, this decision was praised by some, criticized by many. There were various views expressed regarding this decision. However, today, we are seeing the results of this decision. So let's just analyze the situation. There is a cost for every decision. What has this decision cost Sri Lankans? In the years 2019 and 2020, 2 years, the cost that the government had to bear to provide chemical fertilizer subsidies to the farmers of this country, be it paddy, coconut, rubber, vegetables, fruits, all other industries included, was only 51.4 billion rupees. The cost that the government had to bear for chemical fertilizer subsidies for all of these areas was 51.4 billion rupees. However, the cost that the government has decided to pay as compensation to farmers who suffered losses because they couldn't provide proper fertilizer to their cultivations, to paddy farmers alone for one season this time around, is 40 billion rupees. 4 seasons, all types of cultivations, the government had to spend 51.4 billion rupees on providing subsidies. One season, paddy farmers only, the government has now decided to pay them compensation of 40 billion rupees. Now, in addition to this, there are other costs that we had to bear as a result of this decision. You might remember the Chinese fertilizer ship that was rejected in Sri Lanka. We had to pay a sum of $6.9 million as compensation without a single drop of fertilizer falling on Sri Lankan soil. $6.9 million. In addition to this, today if you go to the market, you will see many brands of imported rice and other imported items in the Sri Lankan market, especially rice. Now, these imports also cost Sri Lankans valuable dollars that we don't have right now to spare. In addition to all of this, there was also nano-chemical fertilizer that was imported from India, and the figures are not yet out, but you can be rest assured that millions and millions of US dollars were spent on this as well. So you be the decision maker. We report, you decide on the pros and cons of this decision. Where do you rank it?
Now, official data indicate that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka had printed 26 billion rupees yesterday. The Central Bank has printed money 3 times so far this year.
The amount of money printed by the central bank has risen to 146 billion rupees so far this year. This was after 26 billion rupees was printed yesterday. Central bank data show money has been printed thrice so far this year, on the 18th, 20th and 24th of this month. A $100 million Sri Lanka development bond auction went undersubscribed this month. This was after only $77.8 million came in from investors. Excess money printing since January 2020 has increased money supply, pushing inflation on an upward trend. Central bank data shows that inflation in December last year had hit 14% from 11.1% in November 2021. However, Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral recently said that necessary measures have been taken to curb the rising inflation rate in the country.
The Central Bank decided that we would once again, after a period of about 5 months, that the policy rate would be increased, mainly because we want to give a very clear message that we would want to see the inflation being dealt with, and also to give a message that the external sector needs to be stabilized further. We have taken certain measures.
Opposition lawmaker Iran Vikramaratne, however, says the country has printed more money than it has during the past decades. He made these remarks during the Pathikada program on our sister channel, Sirasa TV, this morning. Usually, money is printed by considering the economic growth in consultation with the Monetary Board and the Central Bank Governor. There is a monetary law. The decisions are made in line with that. We have learned that 1.4 trillion has been printed in the past 2 years. This is even above the money printed by the Central Bank for decades.
මහා බැංකුවේ දශක ගණන් වලට එකතුවටවත් ඒ අවුරුදු දෙක තුල ගහපු මුදල ගහලා නැහැ. මේ මහා බැංකුවේ දශක ගණන් වලට ගහලා නැහැ.
Meanwhile, central bank data indicate that banks are facing a shortage of approximately $4.5 billion at present. However, the central bank had recently instructed licensed banks to spend for fuel imports. Economic analysts say these factors have to be taken into account when issuing similar directives.
The banks are also their businesses, and part of their business is basically funding or helping their customers with their requirements. So by providing this money to this or the foreign exchange to the central bank, will they be unable to service their own customers and provide the business that they were used to providing? Plus, the banks have to also manage their own liquidity position. They have maybe some liabilities coming up in the future, and for that reason, because they know that there is a foreign exchange crunch, they may be holding dollars in order to be able to finance those positions in case they are not available at that time. Thirdly, there are counterparty risks that some of these banks have to adhere to in terms of their principle, where they're not allowed to lend if the counterparty, the risk is higher than what their risk management strategies allow them to. So I think all these three have to be taken into consideration when looking at a direction like this from the central bank.
Meanwhile, the Asian Development Bank's country director says small and medium-scale enterprises are facing severe difficulties in Sri Lanka as access to finance has remained limited despite increased liquidity in the banking industry.
SMEs are more vulnerable than large enterprise in an economic downturn because they are too small to downsize. This financial constraint is more severe in Sri Lanka than other Asian countries with similar income status. SMEs' access to finance has remained limited despite increased liquidity in the banking industry. Exports of global value chain linked products, which dominate trade and drive growth in many other Asian economies, have not picked up in Sri Lanka.
The ADB country director made these remarks during the 63rd annual general meeting of the National Chamber of Commerce in Colombo yesterday. Turkish ambassador to Sri Lanka was also present.
Have the problems of the people been solved despite printing billions of rupees? About 1,500 families in Padyatalava have been severely affected due to a road construction project that has been stalled at present. Residents point out that hundreds of thousands of rupees that were spent on this project have now gone to waste. The Road Development Authority had undertaken the task of completing a 1 kilometer stretch of the road connecting the village of Madavatta to the Ampara-Kandy main road. The construction of the road had begun on the 28th of November last year under the auspices of State Minister Wimalavira Disanayaka.
විමලවීර දිසානායක මහත්තයා ඒ කියාපු විදිහට මේ වැඩේ වෙන්න ඕන නිකන් මිනිස්සුන්ට මේ මිනිස්සු
Although they had first announced that the road would be carpeted, the project had been stalled after laying concrete to only a portion of the road. The drainage system for the road has been neglected, while no steps have been taken to construct a culvert as well. The machinery used for the project cannot be seen in the area as well.
මේක තමයි මේ කට්ටියගේ අඩි අඟලට තාලනේ ABC level එක. ඉංජිනේරු තාක්ෂණය කියන්නේ මම දන්නේ මොන තාක්ෂණයද දන්නේ.
The people of Hiravana are helpless as a result of this project that has been stalled due to poor efficiency.
Gum matter came across the Old Kataputa village in Hingaragoda in 2020 when traversing from door to door. By then, clean drinking water was a luxury to 600 families. Kidney patients were on the rise with a water purification system insufficient to meet their demands. Gum matter came forth once more to alleviate their woes. Gum matter for the people, by the people.
Transparency International says corruption in Sri Lanka has increased compared to several countries.
Sri Lanka had dropped to the 102nd position among 180 countries on Transparency International's Corruption Index for 2021. The country was ranked 94th on the index, along with countries like Ethiopia, Suriname and Tanzania in 2020. However, Sri Lanka's rankings had dropped last year due to rising corruption, although the three countries saw better rankings. Transparency International said corruption levels remain at a standstill worldwide. Types of corruption taken into account including bribery, diversion of public funds, protection of journalists and investigators. It said 86% of the countries had made little or no progress in the last decade.
India's High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle, says Sri Lanka has a special place in India's neighbourhood first policy. He made these remarks during an event in Colombo yesterday.
That Sri Lanka indeed occupies a central place in India's neighbourhood first policy. So creating more connectivity is one task that we have. Building more bridges of investment in both directions is another task that we have in this year. Promoting trade, bilateral trade between the two countries, and in this we are cognizant of the requirements of Sri Lanka and we'll keep that always on our mind.
The Indian High Commissioner made these remarks as he graced the induction ceremony of Sanjay Bandara as the 26th President of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka as the chief guest. Outgoing President of Chartered Accountants, Manil Jayasinghe, and several other dignitaries were present at the event. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has said steps must be taken to strengthen trade between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. He said that the free trade agreement between the two countries should be used to this effect. This was during a meeting in Islamabad with Trade Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena and State Minister Taraka Balasuriya. Minister Bandula Gunawardena had expressed keen desire to expand cooperation with Pakistan in diverse fields. This includes joint ventures and investments in high potential sectors.
We'll be back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
Providing science education to children in far-flung villages of the country. Tech Bus.
Welcome back. The Samagi Sevaka Sangame held its first annual convention under the patronage of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa at the new town hall in Colombo today.
A group including parliamentarians and civil activists attended the annual convention of the Samagi Sevaka Sangame, which was organized by its president Ashok Abesinghe. There must be some justice to the commitments rendered by all of you. Your blood and sweat must count. We are a party that builds social justice. They established a Rajapaksa administration by portraying themselves as heroes. They said they would create a land of prosperity, but what they have created is a land of auctions. At a time when they are selling national assets and resources of economic significance to local and foreign entities and their henchmen, we wish to tell you that the Samagi Jana Balawegaya is ready to guide this country to prosperity by protecting national resources under a government of ours. We won't sell off the country's assets. We wish to state that on behalf of future generations, we will retrieve the country that has been sold off. Our wishes would go out to the people and not to the kings. I can make a promise at this stage. The Samagi Jana Balawegaya will create an era in which all victims of political victimization since 1994 will receive justice.
ඒකයි අපේ පැතුම මේ වේදිකාවේ ඉඳලා පැහැදිලි පොරොන්දුවක් දෙන්න පුළුවන් 94 ඉඳලා දේශපාලන පරිගැනීම් වලට ලක්ුණු සියලු දෙනාටම ඇත්තටම ඒ තීන්දුව ලැබෙන තීරණාත්මක යුගය සමගි ජන බලවේගයේ ශක්තිමත් ආණ්ඩුවයි කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
President's Counsel Rinzi Arsikularatne said that there is a suspicion as to if those involved in placing a hand grenade at the All Saints Church in Boralla intended to prevent the commemoration mass scheduled to be held on the completion of 1,000 days since the April 21st attack. President's Counsel Rinzi Arsikularatne was appearing for the suspects arrested in connection to the incident.
Submissions were made today before Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajendra Jayasuriya regarding the discovery of a hand grenade at the All Saints Church in Boralla. President's Counsel Neville Aberatna, who appeared on behalf of His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, requested court to look into whether a fair and just investigation is underway to arrest the real suspects in order to ascertain the truth. He requested court to look into as if the case is being handled by a senior police officer, given the severity of the incident. President's Counsel Rinzi Arsikularatne, appearing for the suspects arrested in connection to the incident, submitted to court the CCTV footage of the incident. Making his submissions in court, he said that helpless people are being held on detention orders without a proper investigation being carried out into the incident. The President's Counsel said that there was no legal basis to proceed by detaining the current suspects in police custody and requested court to release them on bail. Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajendra Jayasuriya ordered the Colombo Crimes Division to conduct an impartial inquiry into the incident. The magistrate ordered the Colombo Crimes Division to report to court on the steps that will be taken with regard to the suspects on the 2nd of February. Attorney at law Chamindatu Korala, who appeared for the retired doctor Shirley Herath, said that the B report submitted to court by the Colombo Crimes Division did not mention anything about his client's arrest and detention. The counsel further informed court that a toy pistol and several legally purchased air rifles were seized by the police officers, including the STF, who had entered the house of the retired doctor in Piliandala without a court order or a search warrant. The magistrate noted that a court order was not required to search or arrest anyone under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. When we look at this incident, we feel that this had been done according to someone's plan. On that day, the 14th of January, we had organized a special mass at the Thevatta Church seeking justice for the victims of the April 21st attacks. We see this as an attempt to strike fear to the hearts of the people to prevent them from attending that mass. We informed court that this is a very serious incident and that therefore this must not be taken lightly. We are suspicious as to if the proper suspects have been produced in court. We requested for an impartial investigation to be conducted and for the entire process to be transparent. Responsible officials of the police informed us to look at the CCTV footage starting from 3 p.m. It was the Cardinal who instructed us to look at the footage from morning. It was only then that we saw the true suspect who placed the bomb. We are suspicious as to if the request made to us by the police to look at the CCTV footage from 3 for the police investigation was an attempt to conceal the truth behind this incident. Minister Rohit Abbegunawardena has commented on this matter today. The police doesn't have to act before the media. They don't have to stage theatrics. The police conducted efficient investigations into the incident where a hand grenade was discovered at a church. A doctor was arrested over this.
Everyone linked to the doctor had been arrested. The doctor had made a confession as well. The police is being criticized when everything is going well. This isn't healthy. I don't know who is being hurt the most when the suspects are being arrested. We will have to investigate that. Did the April 21st attacks occur during Gotabaya Rajapaksa's presidency? It was during Maithripala Sirisena's presidency. It was when Ranil Wickremesinghe was in power. Reverend Father Cyril Gamini Fernando expressed the following views at a webinar held via Zoom recently.
On
the 14th, Minister Veerasekara told the media that they would identify the mastermind behind placing a hand grenade at Lanka hospitals and at the All Saints Church, and that it was the same mastermind behind both incidents. He made these remarks before recording a statement from the doctor who was arrested. Before arresting the doctor, Minister Veerasekara had said that the mastermind behind the discovery of the hand grenade at Lanka hospitals and in Borella was the same. Based on this, what we can understand is that they have planned this well even before the hand grenade was discovered at Lanka hospitals, and that they had written a script for this. But we now understand that this is a poor script. Therefore, we can see that this is nothing but a theatric. I believe that the entire country knows that this is the case.
ගොතලා පිටපත ලියලා තාම ලස්සන විදිහට මේක කරන්න උත්සාහ කිරීමක් කියලා. පිටපත තාමත්ම දුර්වල පිටපතක් කියලා අපිට තේරෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මේක අපිට අපි දකිනවා මේක නාට්‍යයක්ම තමයි කියලා. ඒක මම හිතනවා මුළු රටම දන්නවා.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna expressed the following views today.
අද එළියට ඇවිල්ලා මහා වීරයෝ වගේ සමහරු කියනවා හරි ඔය පරීක්ෂණ ගේන්න.
Some people are speaking like heroes and calling for the investigations to be conducted properly and that they can also give evidence. If they had demanded the same at that time as well, the Catholics wouldn't be suffering today. If a person who has done something wrong is using money and other perks and privileges to come to power or to become a party leader, I feel that this is the best time for them to do that. We have reached the easiest thing that can be done by the government that holds a 2/3 majority.
තුනෙන් දෙකක රජයක කරන්න පුළුවන් පහසුම කාරණාවට දැන් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා.
It's been 12 years since the disappearance of journalist Prageeth Eknaligoda. A religious ritual was held at the Mahakali Amman Kovil in Modara today, seeking justice over his disappearance.
Sandhya Eknaligoda, the wife of missing journalist Prageeth Eknaligoda, engaged in the religious ritual of shaving her head today. This was done seeking justice over the disappearance of journalist Prageeth Eknaligoda.
එලවා ජනයලව්වා රජ අසුනෙන් පන්නා දමපංගම් 24 වෙනිදා පද බෙදනව ගමු දේවාලයේ සිට මෝදර කාලිමෑණියන්ට ඔප්පු සිද්ධ කරන්න සන්ධ්‍යා එක්නැලිගොඩට යවන ජාතින්ලා ඉන්නේ. මගේ ඇස් ඉදිරියේම මේ මගේ සැමියාට පැහැරගෙන ගිය බව දැක්ක. සැමියා එක්ක කතා කරපු ඒ සාක්ෂිකාරයන් කියනවා.
The witnesses who once said that they had seen my husband being abducted before their own eyes are now saying that they had lied. They have taken the judiciary for a joke. How can I expect justice from the court? How can I expect justice from the court? At a time when fear is gripping the country and when people are afraid of diseases, I am making these prayers to Goddess Kali and shaved my head. There is a law of nature.
ස්වභාව ධර්මයේ රීතියක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මං මගේ අරගලය ඒ විශ්වීය මාතාවන් පසුපස යන්න තීරණය කළා.
Journalist Prageeth Eknaligoda had gone missing in Colombo 2 days before the presidential election on the 24th of January 2010.
The Police Narcotics Bureau arrested 5 suspects involved in the drug racket today. The suspects were part of an operation to smuggle narcotics worth 3.4 billion rupees into the country.
11 suspects had been arrested in Sri Lankan waters in connection to a drug racket. 6 of them were arrested as they were attempting to smuggle 343.4 kilograms of heroin into the country. 5 other suspects who had gone to sea on a multi-day fishing trawler to receive the narcotics had also been arrested. Meanwhile, Police Narcotics Bureau arrested 5 other suspects who were involved in the racket.
ඈත මුහුදේ මේ නාවිකයෝ සති දෙකක් පමණ බොහොම රළු මුහුදේ රැකගෙන ඉඳලා බොහොම සීරුවෙන් මහන්සි වෙලා
We carried out this operation in the seas for 2 weeks. We had taken 2 boats into our custody. A Sri Lankan boat that came from Iran with the narcotics had been arrested with 5 people on board. Another boat that had left from Trincomalee with 6 suspects on board had been arrested. We will have to enforce the law against them.
අපේ අය දෙනෙක් මේ අයට විරුද්ධව නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. අපිට හම්බ වෙන තොරතුරු මත අපි
We have deployed vessels for surveillance based on the information that we received. We have deployed many vessels in the north, east and the south to patrol the seas on a daily basis. This is something usual that we do. The general public will be able to get a large sum in rewards if they provide us information on these matters. We request the general public to contact us on 011-243-9484 and provide any information on these matters or contact the Police Narcotics Bureau.
පොලිස් මද්‍රව්‍ය කාර්යාංශයට දැනුම් දෙන්න.
Around 8,500 combat-ready US troops are on high alert to deploy at short notice amid rising tension over Ukraine.
Russia continues to deny planning military action against Ukraine despite massing 100,000 troops nearby. US President Joe Biden held a video call with European allies yesterday as Western powers aim for a common strategy against Russian aggression. The Pentagon said no decision had yet been made on whether to deploy troops. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said that it would only happen if the NATO military alliance decides to activate a rapid reaction force or if other situations develop around the Russian troop build-up. He added that there are no plans to deploy to Ukraine itself. Meanwhile, experts have warned that UK households face record-high gas bills if Vladimir Putin orders Russian forces to invade Ukraine. Analysts fear that Russia, which is currently supplying around 40% of Europe's gas imports, could turn off the taps if Moscow is hit with sanctions in response to military aggression.
The Yala National Park provides a great experience for visitors to witness the beauty of nature. Elephants that attract both local and foreign tourists to the park every day are an integral part of this environment. We leave you tonight with some visuals that highlight the importance of paying consideration to these creatures. Tonight's sign language interpreter was Targa Gabriel and I'm Muad Razik. From all of us here at the Newsfirst desk, good night and take care.
The revenue generated from safari trips for foreigners is vital for the Yala National Park. However, these visuals highlight that it is important to understand the migratory routes of these animals.
Newsfirst, main sponsor.